Welcome to Know This Live. I'm Zinhle Essamuah. This week, a district attorney in California started a special unit to investigate hate crimes against Asian Americans, particularly the elderly. That came after a string of brutal attacks against Asian Americans in the Bay Area. One attack last month was caught on video. An 84-year-old man was walking down the street when he was knocked to the ground. He died days later, and a 19-year-old has been charged with murder. But it's not isolated to California. This problem has been growing nationwide since the start of the pandemic. The group Stop AAPI Hate tracked more than 2,500 hate crimes over 5 months last year. Joining me today is Amanda Nguyen. She's the CEO and founder of Rise, a civil rights organization, and she has been outspoken on social media trying to draw attention to this disturbing trend. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and happy Lunar New Year as well.
Yes. Chúc mừng năm mới.
I love that. And I wanted to ask, I know you've been generally outspoken about issues impacting the Asian American community, specifically these disturbing trends that we're seeing. And so knowing all of that, why do you think this hasn't been getting as much attention as other crimes we've seen?
You know, I wish I could tell you the real answers. Honestly, I think we're all struggling to find out what those are. Perhaps it's because of how damaging the model minority myth has been, where it asks Asian Americans, or demands rather, that we put our heads down, we are silent. And that's part of the problem. But I also think another part is that when foreign, the foreign myth is perpetuated, when you have a group of people that you consider as other, and you have consistent rhetoric that says that they're scapegoated for a virus or a pandemic, that has consequences. And we've seen those consequences in the deaths of people who have been attacked.
And you mentioned rhetoric. I'm mindful that the United Nations issued a report and found that rhetoric by former President Trump led to a surge in hate crimes. Do you agree with this? And what other rhetoric might you be referring to?
I absolutely agree with it, because it has resulted in the deaths of people in my community. But of course, racism against Asian Americans has happened long before President Trump. It happened as soon as we stepped foot in this country. In the 1800s, one of the largest lynchings in U.S. history was against Asian Americans. In the 1900s, we were rounded up like animals in internment camps. Our history is so important to teach, and so many people don't know about Asian American history, both our pain, our grief, but also our contributions and our excellence.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of Asian American activists saying how difficult it has been, particularly lately, not hearing from their non-Asian American counterparts about these issues. So what do you think needs to be said in this moment?
I think what so many people are trying to express is, one, grappling with their own grief. And on top of that, calling out for solidarity. Of course, everyone heals in their own way. And what I encourage people to do is, if you can, please speak up and don't be silent about the violence that is happening to us. And also, please educate yourself, listen to grassroots organizers on the ground, and also read about our history.
And you've said in the past, in terms of politicians who part of their role is speaking out against things happening to their constituents, you've said that they need to do more than treat Asian Americans as a special interest group for the ballot box. What do you want to see specifically from them?
I've been in many progressive spaces with espoused values of diversity, but when I look around, I'm still the only Asian American in the room. We're often seen as an afterthought, and I really want that to change. I want politicians who have taken an oath to serve all Americans to do just that. In order to do that, they must denounce these hate crimes that are happening to Asian Americans now.
And we're starting to see some gradual shifts. I know that President Biden signed an executive order shortly after getting into office, and that order sought protection for Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Americans. Is it enough?
Look, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to President Biden for taking a different tone and for denouncing. But we have so much more to do. One of the things I really want to see is not only the president and the administration, including more Asian Americans in leadership, but also covering our stories. Again, not having Asian Americans as an afterthought. And on top of that, really, really calling out for the media to cover our stories.
Yeah, and I know, and as you referenced, Asian Americans have such a rich history and a difficult one when we look at the history of our country. I'm mindful, as we talked about, that it's Lunar New Year, and we've heard about extra precautions that members of the Asian American community are taking right now, given the surge in hate crimes. I know there have been community safe walks where people are walking together. What precautions have you been hearing that folks have been taking since the start of the pandemic? Because these hate crimes are not new.
I'm struggling to even find one in the many, many of stories that I have been told by my friends, by people who've messaged me. I'll just share you one. Um, some of my friends have been wearing their masks certain ways, drawing eyeliner to make their eyes look bigger because they're afraid of getting stabbed, like a 2-year-old and 6-year-old were stabbed in Texas. The man actually said on the record that he stabbed them because he thought they were Chinese and he thought that they were spreading COVID. I've heard other people try to tell their parents, hey, maybe don't try to get somebody to wear their mask, because they're afraid that their parents will be attacked if their parents speak out about anything. So the fear is absolutely palpable, and this constant vigilance adds to the exacerbation of our mental health, and beyond that, the community right now, again, is calling out for solidarity. And that solidarity especially needs to be seen by the media because telling stories is creating empathy. And when you erase our stories, you erase us and you erase our humanity.
And even hearing the stories that you're sharing now, it's just disturbing, right? Because these are people, these are lives of people being impacted. I wonder, as someone who's so ingrained in this work, how do you keep yourself sustained, given how heavy and personal this issue is?
To be honest, I almost, I had this thought when I was about to do that video that went viral. Every other time I've posted about race, I've lost followers. But I thought to myself, you know what? I don't care. I have to talk about these things because no one else was talking about them. And I had no idea that it would go viral. Self-care is so important. And for me, that means, especially on Lunar New Year, eating lots of good food and taking care of myself. And I hope that everyone, no matter who you are, is also able to create that pocket of peace for you too.
And I know you referenced being outspoken. I know one of the issues you've spoken out about is also anti-Blackness within the Asian American community. So what work do you think needs to be done to combat anti-racism within the Asian American community as a whole?
So much. So much. And look, we can absolutely grieve while also being nuanced and critical about our community as a whole. And what I want to say to all my Asian American brothers and sisters is that we must be able to do this work together. We are stronger together, and I implore every Asian American to denounce anti-Black sentiment.
Yes, and in that vein of being stronger together, what does being a partner to the Asian American community look like right now?
Look, I understand everyone is coming from their own community and their own place. And everyone also has their own capacity to heal. That's why my call to action actually was directed at the media, right? But if you have the capacity, then please, please, please help us spread awareness about this that's happening right now.
And I know beyond your anti-racism work, you're also involved with RISE, which is a big part of all that you do. It helps young people make change by getting legislation passed. I know that you shared your story of being a sexual assault survivor, and you proposed and drafted legislation that really modernized sexual assault and survivor legislation today. And so knowing that, how is RISE helping others to make change right now?
What we do is we help people pen their own civil rights into existence. We run essentially Civil Rights Accelerator. It's a training organization where we give activists money And we help mentor them through a 12-week process to pen their own rights. So we help them write their own bill, draft it, and teach them the tools of how to campaign all the way until they get their bill to the governor's or to the president's desk. And I want everyone to understand that, yes, there's a long tradition of people taking their painful living truths and channeling that into justice. You can absolutely do that. Democracy is, after all, meant to be for you.
And knowing all of that, right, your work with survivors, your work in anti-racism, your work in this just difficult moment that is COVID-19 and the pandemic, what is your message to young people who are struggling right now?
I want you to know that you are not alone, and that the pain that you feel, there's absolutely a way to channel that into justice, into meaningful change if you so wish to do that. But also, if you wish to heal, that's also okay too. You are enough already. Just know that no one is powerless when we come together, and no one is invisible when we demand to be seen.
And I think that's an apt note to end on, right? No one is powerless when we come together. Thank you so much, Amanda, for all of your insights and your work. I know that we'll be following it very closely.
Thank you.
Yes, and thanks to everyone so much for joining us for Know This Live. I'm Zinhle Essamuah.